a playlist original.
Where's Earth?
Seems we have intercepted a transmission of unknown origin.
Human.
Unknown.
Can you see this?
I've never seen anything like it.
What the hell is that?
How do we kill it?
You can't.
Oh, God. It's moving right towards you. Move. Get out of there.
All right, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Back to Blockbuster Presents Deep Dives with Owen and Gaius. Except Owen is sitting out, and I have our buddy Ty here helping me this week. You might remember him from our Fast and Furious episode and our Dark Knight episode. Welcome back, buddy.
Happy to be back. It's been a while.
I know it has been far too long in between episodes, so we're going to have to get better at that. I did not think you would want to come back for any spooky season episodes because you made it clear pretty early on that you are not a horror movie guy. I think
not compared to you guys. Definitely not compared to you guys. Yeah.
I think we were going through like we were talking about ways you can kind of come back on, and you were like, "Oh, I've never seen this." And I think you had, I think Halloween, you had never seen like a few other really good ones,
pretty
and I was
big
like,
ones.
and
Not
I was
proud
like,
of it, but
I was
it's
like,
just
well, that's
weird.
It's hard. That's gonna be hard.
Yeah.
But you had a really good idea. So this is gonna be a little different from the other deep dives where we actually, pick a movie and kind of dissect it. This deep dive is gonna be more about kind of a subgenre of horror because we're still gonna release this episode during our little spooky season Tales of Horror series, and it was actually Ty's idea, so the guests actually got to pick this one. So why don't you tell everyone kind of what we're going to be diving into today?
Well, given the season, I know everyone loves a good horror movie, and there are so many out there, but horror is one of those genres that has many subgenres, and my favorite subgenre is space horror. Not to be confused with sci-fi, but space horror specifically. So stuff that takes place in space, but is still deep down a horror movie at heart.
Yeah, I agree. So there is a difference between like science fiction and then like films that actually take place in space, because science fiction horror could easily take place on Earth and just have like a science fiction angle to it. I actually like certain films in this subgenre because there's something inherently scary about at least space for me, because it's like the unknown, and that terrifies me a bit. I can watch something.
There are movies in space that people find terrifying that aren't horror movies. A lot of people found like Gravity terrifying.
I was gonna mention Gravity. That movie freaks me out, and that's not even a horror movie, but it's like there's certain things about it, like not having control of like you said, you're like basically your own gravity in space, like your own kind of form of motion, and then those kind of moments in the movie where they're about to like run out of oxygen in their suits and like stuff like that. It's just, and then that whole isolation of just being alone in this vastness of the universe is terrifying. A little bit actually more terrifying than someone in the hockey mask stalking you through Camp Crystal Lake or Ghostface and Scream. I mean, those are all fun, but like
every time I see them, I'm just like, why don't you just leave? Just run away.
I know. Or run.
Like, I'm trapped on a ship. I can't get out of here. And
since they tend to like in those movies, the killer is usually walking after them, slowly striding after them. There's like, why can't you just like, full on like dart away from them? Or
that's the formula. That's
it's
what
the formula.
It
works. Yeah, you wouldn't have
like don't leave the house. Go into the basement and hide. Like that's gonna work out well for you.
If everyone was realistic, then it wouldn't work.
Yeah.
So there's that. But before we get into some of this stuff, why don't you catch up the listeners on some of the things that you've been doing since the last time you were on the show?
Well, as we all know, there's been some strikes going on, and now I am in Toronto. But most of the stuff that they shoot here is based in the States, so the SAG-AFTRA strike is still affecting us quite a bit. I was very fortunate though last month. There are still some things happening that are either exempt or that are Canadian based, and I was in a pilot that I'm really excited about for a TV show that's going to be coming out at some point next year.
Oh, nice.
It's called Mindscapes. So I think it's actually something that you would be into, because it sort of does have a horror element to it. But it's a psychological, sort of based on mental health, episodic, where it's different time periods. So the episode that I was the villain in was in modern day, but it had flashbacks to like the 1800s. But I got to play a despicable person, and it was a challenge, but I had an amazing time, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how it turns out.
Is it fun to play a truly despicable person?
You know what? It's therapeutic, that's for sure. And it's one of the reasons that I love acting so much, is because it's in you. You've got anger in there, and letting it out in an artistic, creative, positive way is definitely healthier than letting it out in a bad way. But it's fun sometimes to have permission to be a scoundrel.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Say it that way,
because it kind of, I guess, it taps into, like, it is inside all of us, like you said. There's like a little bit, like, if you're a nice person, you don't get to tap into it ever. You just let it kind of chill.
Those are the ones where you're on set and I'm a nice guy, you know me, and the crew, the director, they look at you like after a take and they're just like, oh my God, I didn't think that was in you. But we'll see how it turns out. I'm very, very excited. It's a passion project, and the director was very adamant that the story be told a certain way. So it was challenging, but I had an absolute blast. And
nice.
Like I said, looking forward to it. But yeah, things are still fairly slow. But one step at a time, we have to stand strong and make sure that the good prevail. And it's really not hard to, a hard pill to swallow, knowing that by not being on set, you're helping the next generation and you're helping yourself.
Right.
You want to make sure that we're not AI in the future, and that everyone's getting paid properly and stuff. How about you, man? I know you've been busy.
Yeah, pretty busy. Well, it's interesting because we've had to pivot a lot, even like, on the journalism side of it, because there is news, but it's not like breaking like it would normally break if there was active productions and stuff going on. A lot of the stories are related to the strike, or you're writing about something getting delayed because of the strike. I just did it yesterday with Mission Impossible 8, because that got delayed until 2025 because they were in the middle of shooting that when they took a break to go promote the one that came out of the summer, and then right after they were promoting it, the SAG strike started. So it's a pretty big production, and they can't go back to work yet. It's affected a few movies already. I remember I wrote about the one for Challengers, which is like the Zendaya tennis movie that was supposed to come out in September.
Yeah,
it was supposed to have a big premiere at the Venice Film Festival. They pushed that back. Dune Part 2 got pushed back to next year. So I heard Deadpool 3, even though that's in May, that might get delayed too because they're not done filming that. So most of the stories have been driven around that kind of stuff. But more opportunities to write features and stuff like that, which is fun. More opinion pieces than like actual news. And then the podcast, we've kind of just had fun just kind of doing what we've been doing with this and not really focusing on the news, which is going to be really weird to get back to, like, once we are able to.
Yeah.
I almost forget. I almost feel like Jackson and I, maybe we haven't, like, I've forgotten to discuss how to discuss the news properly.
Well,
we haven't really done it in so long.
You're entertaining. You put on a good show just talking about the movies, and I think that's really what people tune in for. So
yeah, I think that's the fun part. I mean, it's not like technical. You're not watching like a news program basically or listening to a news program.
yeah.
But yeah, I really didn't think we would feel it that much. But yeah, we certainly have on our end.
It's been prolonged longer than I thought, and they just recently went back to the negotiating table, and that didn't last long. So who knows, man? Who knows? It's
I honestly thought when the writers got their deal that it'd be easier for the actors to get theirs, but it seems like that's not the case.
Yeah, it's different. It's a different scenario.
Yeah.
The writer's strike started sooner, but I think this is going to end up being the longer strike of the two.
Looks
so
like
we'll see what happens. But my fingers are crossed that we can get back out there. I'm sick of auditioning for commercials. I want to get my hands dirty and do something more dramatic. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, it's also, I mean, I have a lot of friends who are actors and writers. First, it was the writers that I knew that were going through it, and then they were going through it at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and it's so crazy. As soon as that writer's strike was over, like officially over, like a lot of my friends who write got right back to doing stuff. It was like instant.
They want to have stuff ready to shoot once the actors are back to work. So
yeah, I was like, oh wow, you guys like didn't waste any time. It was just like as soon as they could, like back on their laptops doing and like some of them back in the writers' rooms and stuff. But still no active. I mean, at first we thought we could salvage like the fall TV season, but I mean, if actors can't go back, then I don't know if you can really salvage that at the moment.
I'm thankful to be a sports fan because I've at least
got something else to watch. Yeah, you got something else to watch. Yeah. And I mean, when this started, I remember I was talking to Jackson when we first started talking about it, and he was like, "Yeah, this can't last like that long, right?" And I was like,
"It's not like last time." The whole AI thing is the big monkey wrench. I think that's really complicated everything. I'm hoping that people continue to, cancel their Netflix subscriptions and their Disney Plus and stuff, and try to hit them where it hurts. Because that seems to be the only way that they're going to budge is if they start to really lose revenue. Yep.
And I think you're seeing it with like box office and stuff too. Like, I mean, movies are doing okay, but they could be doing a bit better. I honestly didn't realize the power of having actors be able to promote work, because I didn't know if like casual moviegoers cared if like a star went on like a TV show and did like an interview about a movie.
Yeah.
But I think now it does matter a little bit, because it might bring some awareness to a few people that weren't really, it wasn't on their radar, and now they are hearing so-and-so talk about it, and now they might want to go see it.
Yep.
So I guess there is some power in that. And the alternative though, and I know everyone can't do this. So like, everyone is not Taylor Swift, but like what
like she just released her own movie.
She released her own movie outside of the studio system and didn't even like consult with them really, and just did a deal with AMC. And I know that pissed off a lot of studios because they want to be in control of that kind of thing. But she was able to do that, spend very little money on marketing. Like she doesn't need to. Like she's her own marketing machine. Her fans are her marketing machine.
One Instagram post is all you really need when you've got that kind of a following. It's crazy.
So it's it's cool that that's kind of helped the fall box office a bit. Like it's made money so far the last 2 weekends. But there's all these other movies that have come out in the last few weeks where it's like, oh, I wonder if they could have done a little better if they had that extra push. Because as much as I love hearing like writers and directors talk about their work, I know most of my friends are like, who's that? They won't know who.
Yeah.
Unless it's like a Spielberg or a Scorsese or a Nolan, they're not going to know who these people are. So I guess it is important to have like your, Zendayas and Tom Hollands and stuff in front and center to promote work.
Yeah. I'll go see a Scorsese movie just because it's a Scorsese movie. I don't need to hear him talk about it.
Right.
I'm looking forward to seeing Killers of the Flower Moon, but there's certain stuff that if it's not on your radar, like that movie's been on people's radars for over a year, but some of the smaller stuff that you're not aware of existing, that's really going to be trouble.
Yeah.
It's not easy to promote.
I'm going to AFI Fest tomorrow, and one of the screens I'm going to is for the bike riders, which I was really excited to see, but I know that got delayed from its December release.
So it's not playing.
Well, it is going to play because it already started playing in the festival circuit, so they
Yeah.
are going to show it. And then I was like, "Is it still okay to review it?" And they were like, "Yeah, you can still. It premiered already. It's fair game, but we don't know when it's going to release theatrically." I know they still want to try to make it qualify for award season, so they're still trying to figure out if they can do it. But they
Not a good year for that. I think
Not a
there's
good
a
year.
lot of really good stuff that already came out
Yeah.
this year, so maybe it might be better
Yeah,
if they saved it.
I think they should save it too because from what I've heard, which the reviews are good, but from like some of the people I know have saw it, like at Telluride said that it's good, but it's not exactly like an awards movie per se. Like
Yeah.
it's highly entertaining, but I guess from their test screenings they realized that we would need the cast to be able to promote it. Like you need Austin Butler out there, you need Tom Hardy.
Yeah,
out
and I
there.
mean those guys are
like
very likable, very personable.
Yeah.
You'd want them there to do their job and promote it for sure. And in terms of like, I feel like acting awards are going to be kind of swept by Oppenheimer.
Yeah,
and I don't know, unless they're hoping for, I don't know if the Bike Riders has a great screenplay or something. I don't know, but
yeah,
I think some of the effects, some of the art direction we've seen this year has been incredible, and the acting like second to none. Oppenheimer, that's one of the best performances I've ever seen. So.
I agree. It was good, and only Nolan can turn that movie into like a $942 million global box office grosser, released during the heart of the summer. There's nothing about that says like it's gonna be a hit, but it's no. I mean, I think he's one of the few directors that his name alone can sell a movie.
3-hour long talkie biopic.
Yeah.
With a $200 million budget.
If anyone else is directing that movie kind of bombs, but not him. So there's that at least. All right, before we get into like the subgenre stuff, I want to ask you, so is it just that you haven't like seen a lot of horror movies, or are you just not a fan of a lot of horror movies like in general?
I mean, it's a good question. All of the ones that I really like are critically acclaimed. The Shining is one of my favorite movies.
It's a great movie.
Maybe I just was had a weak stomach or whatever. But when I was a little kid, I didn't really like slasher films. I didn't want to see suffering. I didn't want to see gore. And for that reason alone, I think I stayed away a lot of the times. Like it just didn't appeal to me. I mean, as an actor, I would act in a film like that. And I've been on sets. Like I worked on Hemlock Grove. Eli Roth was the guest director of that episode. And I was watching this like fake werewolf like tear this girl to shreds. And I mean, it's hilarious when you're on set, but I just I don't love the genre unless it's a really well done, like Get Out or like I said, The Shining.
Like Smart.
Yeah. So it's just it's not that I don't like them. It just never appealed to me as much.
It's so funny because like to hear you say like you've done them or been in that genre, and then like I've like people like Jamie Lee Curtis, who's been in a ton of them, like doesn't like them.
Yeah,
she doesn't. I don't think she's really seen any outside of her movies that she's done. Like she gets a lot of crap from horror movie fans because she was labeled like a scream queen because of like Halloween, and then of course she did like a bunch of slasher movies post Halloween because like she famously said like, I did Halloween. It was critically acclaimed. It was a hit. I thought I was going to be in a bunch of movies after that, and that didn't happen. And then
she's produced a lot of that stuff too, right? Like she knows that people want to see it.
Yeah, in the later part of her career. So she made a good point. She was like, I didn't make any real money off of Halloween until she did H2O because she was able to put that together as a producer, but mainly when she did this latest like David Gordon Green trilogy because she positioned herself to make a lot more money as a producer on these. And so it wasn't until we got this new iteration of Halloween that she actually made significant money from it. But
well deserved.
at least she's never lied about being like this big genre fan. Like she's not. She's actually terrified of most of them. I think it's funny when people say they're terrified of them and they can star in them. I guess it's different.
It's weird
when you're in it.
It's weird. I mean, I was in a horror film last year, but it was pretty campy. It wasn't really scary horror. It had some jumps and stuff, but I mean, it wasn't really a slasher film. And I think that's the difference. I just really don't. It doesn't appeal to me, the slasher stuff. I love Scream, the original Scream. I loved when that movie came out. I remember it well, but never like the first Friday the 13th scared the crap out of me, and I just never wanted. I never want to see any of the other ones.
And you never want to go back to Camp Crystal Lake ever again.
No, I was too young.
They went back so many times.
The first thing I remember seeing when I was really little was the original Terminator, and that scared the crap out of me. And
well, that's like structured. It's structured like a horror movie. Yeah, it's structured like a horror movie. Like the way it's a kind of the stalk and chase method of it all feels like a horror movie.
I watched it a few weeks ago. It totally felt like a horror movie. Whereas the second one felt more like an action movie. Same thing really is with when you think about Alien versus Aliens.
Aliens, yeah.
Alien is like a horror movie. Aliens is more like an action movie. But it's like the whole like unstoppable force. A lot of the time, that's something supernatural where you don't know how to stop it.
Right.
But in the slasher films, you've got like this unexplainable superhuman strength or whatever it is. But it just is not. It was never like up my alley for some reason. I liked car chase movies when I was a kid. I'd watch them like over and over and over and over and over. And there's never any car chases in the horror movies for some reason. So
there really isn't. No. And honestly, man, I love horror movies, but it's considered like the rotten stepchild at like film school. So like when I went to film school and they're like, oh, what's some of your favorite like movies or your favorite genre? And you mentioned that, the like side eye you get.
It's like superhero movies and horror movies aren't really on that same level intellectually or when it comes to like winning awards and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I know you love them. I think it's great that everyone has their own taste, and they're super popular. They're more popular. I saw a study that they were talking about genres and how comedies and romances have been plummeting in popularity, and horror movies have been going up and up and up.
Well, they're cheap to make usually. Yep. They have like a pretty rabid fan base. So like, I mean, my friends have always said like, dude, you'll go see one on opening night and you'll know it's bad. You'll be like, oh, it looks horrible, but I'm gonna be there.
You'll go see it anyway.
Yeah,
and it'll always be packed.
Yeah, and it's usually unless it's really good, it's usually like a one weekend wonder. Like it has like a really good opening weekend, and then it sometimes falls off a cliff in the second weekend. But they've made all their money back by that end of that first weekend, and they're like, like whatever. It's usually enough to like greenlight a sequel. In that case, 10. Or 10 of them. Yeah. But yeah, I will say though, I think the last few years we've gotten a lot of really good ones that aren't just like campy. There are some really smart ones that have been coming out too. Probably thanks in large part to like A24 releases some really good ones.
I was just gonna say, Upgrade is if you consider that a horror movie. I was a big fan.
Good genre movie. Yeah, I loved Upgrade.
Fan of that. Midsummer, obviously, fantastic.
Love that movie too. I know that one's polarizing for a lot of people, but I liked it a lot.
I love Florence Pugh, and she's a fantastic actress, and
and great in it.
I just like how that movie challenged a lot of the norms. How it was daytime. There's no dark shadows and stuff. It was really very, very, very scary. Hereditary fucked me up.
Yeah, that's another one too.
Really good movie. Another good one. But like those are ones you have to watch. Like I'm not gonna go and watch all the slasher films, but the stuff like that even like the Robert Eggers movies, I don't know if you'd even call them horror movies, but big fan of those as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, that stuff is fantastic. Really well done. And I like that it's helping the genre be taken more seriously. It's getting more eyes on those kind of movies that normally probably wouldn't be on them. So more power to them.
I agree. So when you think of horror in space, like that subgenre, what is Alien the first movie that comes to mind when you think about that subgenre?
The original Alien, it didn't create the genre, but it definitely revolutionized it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I watched all kinds of videos and I looked at all sorts of blogs about like the best sort of space horror, and it's undisputed number one on every single list. I couldn't find a list that it wasn't number one on. And it's hard to argue with it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that it's funny too, because like you haven't seen Halloween, but a lot of people will call like Alien like Halloween in space because of the way it kind of.
I heard that.
Yeah, it's like it's more suspense driven and more like atmospheric than anything. I I do love an Alien that even though you have that great kind of creature creation that kind of became the face of that franchise, you don't really see a lot of it until it's
That makes
absolutely
it scary.
necessary. It
That
makes it a
makes it
lot
scary.
scarier.
That movie, the atmospheric, just like the terror of creeping around through the corridors on the ship, was really scary. The movie was less scary almost once you do start to see the xenomorph a lot more, which is the same with horror movies. They're always way scarier the first third,
right?
Then once you sort of start to see, oh, that's the monster, that's the murderer, oh, that's how we're going to defeat him, and then it becomes more like a thrillery near the final act. But Alien had a way of just being so scary without showing you everything. It played its cards close to his chest. And then in the second one, I mean, I always considered Aliens a horror movie as well, just because the first third, you don't really see them. You don't really, it felt like a horror movie. Then it was more of a guns blazing sort of action flick, but definite difference. So, I liked in the third one, they went back more to the formula of the first one. David Fincher decided to, I mean, a lot of people don't like that movie, but it's
polarizing one.
It's more like a horror movie though.
It is more in line, I think, aesthetically with the first one. It's just, that movie, I guess famously, there's a lot of studio interference. Yeah. I know David Fincher kind of rejects it, doesn't even consider it one of his movies at this point anymore. Yeah. It almost made him want to quit making movies before he even really got started.
I'm glad he didn't. What did he do after that? Seven?
He did seven. He did seven after that. So he wouldn't have gotten that, which would have been real fucking shame. But that's a franchise that's interesting too, because I've seen all of them. And I guess you can count so there's the Alien movies, and then you have Prometheus and Alien Covenant.
Yeah.
I love the first two movies. I love Prometheus as well. Again, that's a polarizing one too. There are some people. I remember when I saw that movie on opening night, it was packed because everyone was looking forward to it. And I think in the marketing there was a lot of push and pull on how much are we gonna say this is related to Alien, how much we're gonna not say it's related to Alien. And then by the time you're watching it in the theater, you're like, all right, it's
it's connected.
It's connected.
I think people wanted to see a xenomorph, like the first one, Born or something like that, and they were kind of like, these white, giant, tall guys.
Dark guys, yeah.
So it did feel like its own thing, but I mean, I watched it a few days ago. I feel like I like it more every time I see it.
I used to, and I enjoyed it a lot.
It does feel more like the first Alien than the second one. It's got big time tension, body horror. Very, very, hard to watch certain parts. And I think they did a good job with it. But again, it's extremely polarizing. Extremely polarizing.
Yeah, I remember it was just I saw it with a friend, and this is after I had talked up at least the first two. We watched the first two Aliens. She had never seen it, and she loved those. So we saw Prometheus on opening night, and it was over, and she was just like, that was so boring. And then I realized after that opening weekend that other people felt that way too. And I felt like I was in the minority on I didn't think it was boring. But for some people it was very talky and not enough action.
Yeah. But look at the cast. That's a great cast in that movie. So I'm happy to watch them talk.
From top to bottom. And then when I watched it, because we deep dived Prometheus it was a while ago. But I watched it again for that, and I did love all the more action-driven things that happened in the movie. But honestly, the screenplay, the more talky stuff that most people reject, ended up being more interesting to me that time around than before. It was just, I just love the ideas in it, and I think the acting is pretty great. I thought the characters are pretty great as well. Michael Fassbender is amazing in it.
It's just all anti-heroes and kind of there's no true villain. Everyone sort of has a justification. Fassbender, I loved the Michael character. One of my favorite performances of his, and he's one of my favorite actors. But every time I watch it, I notice new little ticks and just the nuance of it all, and how he sort of, if you go and watch Lawrence of Arabia and then you watch Prometheus, you'll see he really did. David based his his performance on
that.
Yeah, on the character Lawrence, but I don't know. I think they listened to the critics, and when they went and did Covenant, it's
They're
almost
like
like Covenant's
more
comparable
action.
to Aliens, and
Yeah.
Prometheus is comparable to Alien, and they did the same thing.
And here's a solid example of you can't make anyone happy. So Prometheus is too talky, and that it makes money, but not like the money they probably thought. Well, it made money worldwide, but not the money it needs to make here, like in the States.
Yeah.
And then they're like, all right, well, when we do the Alien Covenant, like we'll give you like all the xenomorphs you want and all the action you want. And then that didn't do well either. And and then like they're like, well, that was too much.
Yeah,
so
they
it
keep
was like
flopping. It's like Alien 3, and then they went and did Alien Resurrection, was a lot like the second one. So it's almost like they've got like a horror, an action, a horror, an action. They keep flipping between the two. The new one, apparently, I just saw a quote saying that Ridley Scott just saw it and thinks it's amazing.
Yeah, the one that Fede Alvarez is doing.
Yeah,
good choice, because I like Fede Alvarez a lot so far, because he did the Evil Dead remake from 2013, which is pretty solid.
I didn't know that.
He did Don't Breathe, which is also pretty good. Horror movie. And he apparently is a big Alien fan. I know there have been other directors. The director of District 9, I know he wanted to do like an Alien movie that was like long in development, and I feel really bad because I feel like a lot of his projects always are long in development and then they don't go anywhere. I know he was hanging on with Alien for a really long time.
I thot that was greenlit,
and that fizzled, and then he didn't happen. Then he got attached to like RoboCop, and then that didn't happen. He got to do Gran Turismo, so good for him.
I still haven't seen that. I really want to.
Actually, I kind of said that flippantly, but it was actually pretty good. I
know you liked it. I know you said you liked it.
Oh yeah, I went in with like zero expectations. I was like, this is actually pretty good. But yeah, I mean, I feel bad for him because he came up with all this like kind of art design for his Alien project, and like talked to Sigourney Weaver about it. She was super excited to be involved.
Like District 9 was great. At least I even liked Elysium. I thought it was good. I didn't see Chappie, but you can tell like he knows the genre. He knows how to design an alien. I think there was some promise there, but it's weird that they did it that way. Then they ended up doing, I guess, Prey instead.
Yeah, which is kind of like I mean, that's a clever way of doing those type of movies without being like, oh, this is like directly what it is. It's kind of adjacent to, which I guess worked out because a lot of people liked it, which is perfectly fine. But
I thought it was good.
I thought, I mean, that probably is the best way to do it sometimes when like all these kind of iterations haven't worked, because like now I'm thinking about the Alien franchise, because it's not just like the direct Alien franchise, and then if you really like, there's also the kind of offshoots like Alien versus Predator.
See, I don't believe I ever saw Alien versus Predator, and then I always forget that there's that connection and that those universes are the same. I always think of Blade Runner and Alien universe being connected, and I always forget that the Predator universe is supposedly collected.
I own it. I own Alien versus Predator. I haven't watched it. It's probably collecting dust in my shelf because I haven't watched it.
I remember I've seen clips from it, and it had some pretty good bits, but I never watched it start to finish.
And then I remember on one episode, I thought because I didn't see it, but for whatever reason I thought Alien versus Predator Requiem, which is the second one, I thought it got a better reception because I know it was rated R. Like the big issue with the first Alien versus Predator is PG-13, and they did that to maximize the number of people that like especially young kids that could see it. Yeah. But the second one where they went R, and I was like, oh, like I heard that one was better, and like Jackson was like, no, it's not. It's not. I mean,
usually when you're trying to sandwich an R-rated film into a different rating, it's not going to end well. So
yeah,
lately they've been learning that more
and more. In terms of, and this is a loaded question, at least with the first two movies, do you have a preference over Aliens?
You know what? I've seen Aliens way more times. So when I was a kid, I was born in the mid 80s. So I saw Aliens before I saw Alien.
Okay.
And I watched it many, many, many times. And then I only had seen the first time I saw Alien. It was years after I'd seen the first one or seen the second one. So I do prefer Aliens,
Yeah.
but I think Alien is the better film.
All right, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've always
Like,
preferred
by far.
I've always preferred Alien over. I mean, and honestly, you can't really go wrong, I guess, with either because so many people love both of them.
Yeah.
They are very different from each other.
I
Even though
love the cast. I love so any sort of ensemble, like just the crew that infiltrate the planet to go hunting for them.
Yeah,
I thought they were great. And I remember I had all the toys and stuff. They marketed it really well. I had the little, the figurines and stuff. And I mean, it's tough to compare. Different director. Really, the only thing's the same as as far as I know, like it's different cinematographers and stuff too.
Yeah.
Aside from that, the producer obviously Ridley Scott, but yeah, it's tough. It's a tough call. I mean, they're both good in their own way, but
yeah.
I don't know. I think they could stand alone as their own films without even needing each other, which is pretty neat. It's kind of like the difference between Terminator and Terminator 2.
Yeah, that's a good comparison. Because I think with those, like, even if you're a fan of both, even if you think one's better than the other, there's the agreement is like they're both good.
Yeah, they're hard to compare.
They're way too different from each other. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
Terminator 2 is like an action, like almost road trip movie a little bit because they're like going from, like place to place.
American road movie.
Yeah, and then the Terminator it's pretty much like a horror movie. This kind of unstoppable thing going after Sarah Connor for the entire runtime, and he is essentially like a Jason Voorhees or a Michael Myers, with no like conscience or anything, just like with one like distinct purpose, and that's to kill her.
And it's funny because that's how an alien probably, I mean, in terms of what we've done to portray aliens in cinema, it's like you can't reason with them. They don't speak our language. They don't care. They just see you as like how we would see an insect on the ground. You just want to step on it. You don't care if it's got a family, if it's got feelings. It's just something in the way, and that's how the Terminator was as well. A lot of my favorite space horror movies don't even have aliens in them. So like there's the whole Alien, obviously, and I think maybe it's because Alien is so good that you're not going to go and make that movie better. You're not going to make something similar. So I think
it's almost people that try to copy The Exorcist a lot, where it's like when everyone tries to make a demonic possession movie, it's like it's the same. Even like when they try to like piggyback off The Exorcist, like they just did recently. It's hard to top. It's hard.
I heard that didn't work out so well for them.
Did not work out so well. So it's hard to top like the granddaddy of all of them when that one is like so good.
Yeah,
it's really impossible. But yeah, I agree with you. I mean, why do that when you can just go another route?
Yeah, I mean, even when like when I think about some of my favorite movies that you wouldn't even really call like for that genre, but like if you look at Riddick, Pitch Black, Starship Troopers, they kind of feel like Alien. There's the monsters, and they sort of feel like a horror movie at the beginning, but really they are more of an action movie. When you think about pure like a horror film, like a really terrifying horror film, Event Horizon maybe is the scariest of all.
Yeah,
and so there's no real aliens.
I'm glad you brought that up because I avoided that movie for a really long time. And not because I didn't think it was good. I had friends that told me that they thought it was really good, but I think I had my perceptions of. I remember I knew that it didn't do well in theaters. That it kind of flopped, but then I heard that
it flopped huge, and it was interfered. Apparently, there's like a half an hour of it that never made the final cut that would have made it a lot better.
Yeah,
and Paul W.S. Anderson was like super mad about how much interference they had. Apparently there's like a copy of it somewhere, but I don't know if it'll ever see the light of day. But
and he was another reason why I stayed away initially, because I was like, oh, who directed it? And I was like, oh, the guy who did he did Resident Evil movies, and at least did he do all of them or at least a chunk of them? And
The first couple, I think they shot those here actually. When my film school, my lighting teacher was like the DOP on the first one.
okay.
But
Not that I hate them or anything. I mean, I like
no,
the
they're
first
okay.
one at least.
I watched the reboot of it actually like yesterday.
Okay.
The one from like 2021, Raccoon City or whatever.
Was it good?
I actually enjoyed it. Yeah, it was a lot more like the video games.
Okay.
And
that's always been the complaint about that entire franchise, is that it's not closely.
This was like this was a lot like
the
video game. Like the house they went in, like the lobby was the same.
Yeah.
It took place at the police station and the house mostly, so it was like Resident Evil 1 and Resident Evil 2.
Got it.
So they actually did a good job with that. The cast was pretty decent too, so
nice.
Give it a watch if you can. I think it's on Prime Video. That's where I watched it.
Okay. So yeah, he did those. He also did the Mortal Kombat from like 1995. So I had like
that movie was awesome. Come on.
So, no, it is. It is. I'm being snobby now. No, it is. I actually do like that. I can't tell if it's a good movie or if it's just the song that I love like so much that kicks off the movie.
Songs are part of a movie. If you like the song, then that's one of the reasons to like the movie.
At least I loved it when I was a kid, but I was like, oh, so did he make like a really good sci-fi horror movie or whatever? And then someone was like, you need to find
some horror elements to it for sure. It wasn't as violent as the reboot, but it had some pretty gory stuff in it.
Yeah. So I finally watched Event Horrizon, and watched it how a friend told me to watch it. They were like, you need to watch it like alone in the dark.
That's what I did, yeah.
And I was like, okay. And I was surprised when it was over that it was pretty. It's pretty scary. I mean, like it, and not in the way like you said. Like there's not like it's more like
there's no aliens.
There's more atmosphere and like the mood it creates, and something also very like claustrophobic about it too.
Very much. And that's the thing in Aliens. The second one, you don't feel that same because they're on a planet. I mean, obviously they're in the middle of space, but they're on a planet. It's not
more
like
open.
They're in a ship.
Yeah.
Where in the first Alien, you're kind of scared, like there's nowhere to run. Event Horizon had that same feel where they're trapped on the ship with each other. It kept getting scarier and scarier. Some of the imagery, it burned into your head. Some really, really clever filmmaking there. I'd only watched it for the first time in 2000. What was it? Like, I guess a year and a half ago. Because for the same reason, I was always like, I heard this movie was terrible, but then I've also heard, it's a cult classic. Give it a chance, and I gave it a chance. I was pleasantly surprised. Good cast though.
Yeah, really I would just really good cast. Yeah, like Sam Neill, Lawrence Fishburne, Kathleen Quinlan, Jolie Richardson. Yes, but had a very troubled production. Was extremely rushed by Paramount. Because they were also
apparently,
dealing
like, some
with
creepy shit was going on set too. Like the movie was
apparently. Yeah, they were dealing with Paramount was dealing with Titanic, and like they were kind of like, well, that's our priority, not this movie. So like let's just they realized that Titanic wasn't going to meet its release date, so they're like, we need to fix that and not deal with this. But yeah, like you said, there's an original 130-minute cut of the film was heavily edited by the studio.
Yeah.
And it was a commercial and critical failure. It grossed $42 million on a $60 million budget. But it did well on home video, and in its initial DVD release sold so well that Paramount contacted Anderson to begin working on a restoration of the deleted footage, but it had been either lost or destroyed. In the years since, the film has still developed a cult following and is referenced in other works of popular culture, with many saying it's one of the scariest horror movies to take place in space of all time. Yeah. So I mean, it's funny how time can change things.
Yeah, I agree, and that's an era where there were a lot of other movies between like the late 80s and like the mid 90s. There were a few that all kind of felt similar. I mean, there are a lot of movies that take place in space that are horror films, but like not many are considered great or good even. Like there's a very small amount. I would say, like, would you call Moon a horror movie?
It's got aspects
Have you seen
of
them?
it. Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah, I mean,
Because if you do, then that's one of the better ones.
yeah,
Event
I think there's
Horizon.
aspects of it. Yeah.
The Riddick movies are
So
barely
pitch, so
horror
pitch,
movies.
so Pitch
It's
Black.
tough.
I remember. Well, I remember when Pitch Black, the way that was promoted, and I think my initial thought of it when I saw it when I was younger, that felt more like a horror movie.
Yeah.
And then
I
when
mean,
I
it was
watched it,
scary. Anything where you don't know really what
anything where
the bad guy
the
is
thing
yet,
is,
you're
yeah.
scared. Yeah. It'll
I
work.
remember the initial trailers for that movie felt really scary, and I felt when I saw it, it was. But then I actually rewatched all three of those, like within the last 3 years.
Mhm.
And Pitch Black is still of the ones that we got feels the most like a horror movie in like its structure, but like
Yeah, because I
it's
think
not
once
as
Vin Diesel
scary.
became the character that he is, it's hard
Yeah.
to put him in a movie where you're actually afraid because
Yeah.
he's not going to let himself get killed.
Exactly.
Whereas in the first one, it's pre Fast and Furious. You're like, who's this guy? The only other movie he did was Saving Private Ryan, and he did get killed in that movie. So it felt a little bit more like there were some real stakes.
Yeah.
And stakes are what make a horror movie scary, really. Because if
agreed.
you know that the characters are not going to die, how scary is the movie really going to be?
Yeah, and I would suggest to anyone that doesn't remember what that trailer was like to watch it because it was.
Yeah, I got to go back actually.
That trailer was pretty scary, and I don't remember which one I saw. I mean, I know there's TV spots and trailers and stuff, but there was one where it's like there's a scene where it takes place completely in the dark, and then someone kind of blows like a light basically, and they're all like surrounded. Yeah.
I remember
so that was like the image that was burned in my head when I was younger, thinking that it was much scarier than what it was. And then when I watched it recently, it still holds up. I think it is a good movie. I'm not really a fan of like the Chronicles of Riddick. Like it wasn't like a universe I needed expanding on really.
Same, I agree.
I actually think it's better as like kind of like almost a bare bones kind of stripped down sci-fi horror movie in its own right. But like, I think it does well on its own. And I know that movie came out and did decent. I mean, decent enough to warrant, a sequel.
Yeah.
But I think even that movie has a cult following, more of a cult following now too than it probably did when it first came out.
I think Fast and Furious has a lot to, and Triple X even. He was becoming a thing. It's like, why not?
I think a lot to like
why not make a movie about this character?
And they're like either revisiting his stuff or like let's like expand on how popular he's becoming now. Yeah, mm-hmm. I can see that.
Yeah.
I didn't need it, but I can see.
There's not many. I feel that in that genre, there's not many movies we need, but it's more of a guilty pleasure.
Yeah.
Right? So, there are a lot. I mean, to say space horror and not alien horror was really what I wanted to talk about today. But there are, when you think about like alien horror movies that take place on Earth, there's a ton of really good ones. If you wanted to delve into that, I know like even Independence Day feels like a horror movie at the beginning. The Predator, that's probably the best of them all.
Yeah, my thing about Predator is, and this is why I love the first movie and not so much the sequels that followed, is I love that they don't really tell you anything about what that thing is.
Me too.
It's just dropped in the middle of the jungle and
you don't see it. That's why it felt like Alien.
Yeah, and it's not really like it's dropped in the middle of the jungle. There's no method to its madness other than it's killing all of them. I don't need to know like why it's there or why. I don't need to know how it thinks.
Yep.
Like I think that what kind of diluted that franchise was the more they tried to explain things. And honestly, that first movie, first of all, it's full on 80s glory on top of being a really fun sci-fi movie. It's just everything about 80s action movies is also in that movie too.
That's what made it feel like horror, because the gore and the blood, and
it's super gory
and stuff. I still love that movie. But
and then like him as a creature is just interesting too. Like he just like the way he moves and like it's just almost cool. Like the way that but yeah, I do love that movie a lot. I think that as far as talking about alien movies that take place on Earth, that might be probably one of the best, if not the best.
Yeah, you'd say maybe War of the Worlds is one of the best. A Quiet Place is really good. If we
Right.
assume that those are aliens.
Are they from aliens? Are they aliens? Yeah, I always assumed they were.
Yeah, I assume that they were. If you say that they are, then I think that would count.
Yeah.
The Mist, that's a very polarizing film, but if you think that was an alien life form, that might count too.
I just wrote about that movie. I love that movie. I know a lot of people don't because the ending is so.
Because the ending, yeah. They don't like it.
I hated the ending, but
I loved
it
the ending
because I loved it because I was like, oh, and like because you feel like, yeah, if you would have waited like a few seconds more, man. Like, yeah,
which is like the fact that movie that they greenlit that ending and that they didn't change it after like an audience reaction, I think is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that had a lot to do with like Frank Darabont, who did it. He wanted to do it for a really long time. He had already adapted like Stephen King stuff already. Did Shawshank?
Yeah,
did the Green Mile. So I think Stephen King too, in a way, trusted him, and he did, present that, that this is the ending I want to do, because like Stephen King was like his original ending kind of just, it didn't really like, there was no real closure for anyone.
Is that how it ended in the book?
No, so he changed that entirely. Like that's not so. And he said that to him, like he wanted a definitive ending that would like stay with people.
Yeah.
And then Stephen King said when he saw it, he was like, that's the ending that it should have been. He's like, my story just kind of meanders on and just kind of like, oh, we don't know what's going to really happen with these people.
I like that he doesn't have that ego. There's a few things that I can recall him saying similar to that are like,
yeah,
I'm glad they changed it, or I'm glad I let them do this. And
now he didn't feel that way about he didn't feel that way about The Shining, which I guess is like a more personal. He's not a fan of what Stanley Kubrick did with that, but like, I mean, Stanley Kubrick
a lot of us
made the whole thing. Yeah, he made the whole thing a Stanley Kubrick movie, and
yeah,
he said it doesn't really resemble his novel at all, and that has to be interesting to have like someone direct what a lot of people say is one of the scariest movies ever, and then the guy who wrote the book, who's usually known for writing some of the scariest stories ever, it's like, I don't like that.
Yeah, movie. No, not a fan.
I mean, that has to be like really weird for fans of that kind of stuff, but that's always tripped me out that he doesn't take it away from anyone that enjoyed it. He was just like, it's different when it's your baby. Yeah, he's like, that's not what that was.
When he writes as many books as he does, he can't possibly hold on to them all in that same way.
And his stuff's been adapted in some really great ways. It's been adapted in some really shitty ways. Mm-hmm. I mean, for every good Stephen King adaptation, there is one horrible one waiting in the wings. So it's like, it's not like, but yeah, I think like it's so interesting to think about this stuff with The Shining, because it's like, Stanley Kubrick was regarded as one of the best directors ever. Some people think that's one of the scariest movies ever. Oddly enough, like much like a lot of movies we're talking about today, The Shining didn't really have great reviews when it came out. Like initially, it was like mixed. Alien also had really mixed reviews when it was released initially.
Some of the best movies do though. But when it comes, going back to talking about Kubrick though, do you consider 2001 a horror movie?
There's something creepy about it. I mean, like there's like, yeah, because I'm not.
There's parts that, I mean, imagine watching that movie in the 60s. Just the claustrophobia you'd feel. Like, to me, it always felt like it felt kind of like a horror movie.
Well, that's what like 2001 reminds me of that. I mean, I get that same vibe from Gravity too. I think that has the same kind of vibe a little bit too. There. I mean, I would say there's elements of it, and then there's the whole like the technology aspect of it that could be considered a little frightening too. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean anything could be a horror film, I guess, at this point, because like you said, like the things about horror movies that take place in space that get me is the claustrophobia of it, and that movie 2001 does have that, and it's very unsettling. You feel uncomfortable while you're watching it.
Oh, big time! Like Event Horrizon, technology is the monster, so to speak.
Right.
So, I mean, that's definitely a thing. What would you say like is your ultimate like all-time favorite in this subgenre, if you have one even? Is it something, because like mine is, we haven't even mentioned. And
okay, I think we already. I mean, I think I'm going with Alien still, only because I've seen it so many times and it still scares me. I actually watched it a year ago alone in my room, and
I need to do that.
Still scares me. Like, and and it's everything about it. And then like I sometimes get a little. I mean, everyone has their own opinion. I've watched it with friends who think it's too slow and they can't get into it.
No.
And I don't think it's slow. I think it takes its time a little bit, but I don't think it's like slow. And I think the entire time that there's stuff going on, like everything is still interesting that's on screen. So I don't think that it's
Well, the
slow in that
slower
regard.
it goes, the more they're building that world, and the more they
Yeah.
build that world, the more you believe it, the scarier it is. Because the more
Yeah.
you believe that they really are floating out in the middle of nowhere,
Yeah.
the scarier, the bigger the stakes, the more tension. That's a horror movie that's built all on tension, right? So
Yeah.
I definitely don't think it's too slow.
And something that really Scott was really good at capturing, which is what I miss, even though I love Aliens, that's what I miss about it when I'm watching Aliens. That there is less of that.
Yeah.
It is more of like a full-on action movie, even though I don't think it starts that way. I think it kind of starts more in line with what Alien was, and then it kind of shifts dramatically into a product of its time. I mean, it's a product of like, which is fine.
Yeah, that was right around when you've got Predator and
right.
It felt like a Schwarzenegger movie that Schwarzenegger wasn't in. Like
pretty much
the guns and stuff. Yeah, I mean it was super badass, and it's hard to be like that scared when you know like how strapped all the characters are. But
yeah,
I mean they managed to make it like some of the gory scenes when they find the cocooned people and stuff. Like there's some real body horror. Some David
I don't
Lynch
think anything can
stuff,
take that an Alien that chest burst scene.
Yeah, but then that was a robot.
Yeah,
like after the fact, the very first chest burst was what made that movie famous. That's like the spoof in Spaceballs.
Yeah,
we had the same guy.
Permanently embedded in my brain. By the way,
terrifying. Like I have a thing with like parasites and stuff. Like it scares the crap out of me. So
that's
like,
why I don't really love body horror that much. I mean, I can watch it. It's so funny because I just watched this movie called Suitable Flesh for Work, and it's like a body possession movie, and it's just no matter it's like watching The Fly. Like when you watch The Fly, every time I watch The Fly, I get like disgusted. It's a good movie, but like watching Jeff Goldblum like slowly transform and Gina Davis just being okay with sticking it out with him, it's like no one would stick that out with anybody.
Have you seen The Thing? Same
Great
feel.
movie,
Incredible movie, but like very, very, very tough to watch some of that stuff. I mean, some of it was done in a way that was like incredibly realistic for the time. Some of it not so much, and that's not harder to watch. But The Fly was done so well.
I think another movie that takes place, even though it does have like kind of like the parasite alien thing going on, a lot of people don't talk about it. I enjoyed it, but Life with Ryan Reynolds and Jake Gyllenhaal, I think Rebecca Ferguson is in that. It's really, I think that's actually pretty good, and I was kind of unsettled by it. I don't know why it kind of came and went. Probably maybe because it feels like
it had a big budget. It had a fantastic art direction. It had great acting. I don't know why it wasn't received better, but I loved that movie. I thought it was great. Super creepy, same idea. A lot of anytime it's like a parasite or something that's possessed somebody or is like cocooning somebody, that gets me, gives me the creeps. So I thought that movie was fantastic.
I thought so too. I didn't understand. I mean, I guess like you said, it was fairly expensive and actually has a pretty decent cast too. I think what it was selling itself on, maybe everyone thought it should have done better. But reviews, I guess, compared it unfavorably to Alien, films like Alien. And I guess it is, and it's like I didn't feel like it was a ripoff though. I mean, I just felt like I think a lot of these movies now, there's nothing wrong with paying homage to stuff that came before.
It was almost
like, I know it's a fine line between ripping something off and like
I mean, yes, like everything is going to be inspired by something else. Like, there's no unique ideas anymore. Like Barbie was basically Elf. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing that's like completely unique anymore. But Life sort of felt like a mix of Alien and Prometheus put together. because
Yeah.
bringing the thing on the ship and then it like gets one guy sick and then starts to grow and blah 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 and like one thing leads to another. That sort of felt like Prometheus.
Yeah.
But the isolation and the small skeleton crew of people being up in space and not like down on a planet felt more like Alien. That reminds me, like I was saying, I hadn't mentioned my favorite. My favorite is Sunshine.
Okay, I've seen that. That's good. That is a good movie.
It sort of goes under the radar. It was like I think it was Danny Boyle's follow up to Slumdog Millionaire, which he won like Best Picture for. But that to me is the best example of isolation.
Yeah.
And that being the scary element, and how again there's no alien, there's no monster. The monster ends up being, spoiler alert, but like a person.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes it so realistic is the fact that like if you did put someone in a scenario like that where they're out in the middle of the vastness of space, you could easily go crazy and start shredding your crew up. But that's my favorite for sure.
It's like cabin fever in space, pretty much.
Yeah.
like what would
Exactly.
drive you crazy? Yeah. That is more terrifying than like facing aliens. I think it's like that. What that isolation would do to you mentally.
Well, because it doesn't require you to suspend your disbelief and like, oh, I don't believe in aliens. This isn't scary. I don't believe in ghosts. Yeah. This isn't scary. But that's the thing with the slasher film. It's like you don't need to believe in a murderer. They're out there, right? And that's what I think. That's one of the reasons I think that they're so scary. But when you look at a movie like Event Horizon or Sunshine or Moon, it's like the bad guy is your own mind, and that gives it like that extra element of terror, I think.
Yeah, I agree. It got good reviews when it came out too.
Yeah.
It got good reviews. I was reading some of what they were saying about it. It was in the UK. It was received moderately well. But some critics found the last reels disappointing, with one critic suggesting the switch to slasher movie mode might have been inserted to appease teenage audiences, and that and then a lot of people felt like the first half of the movie worked better than the second. But
the first half is you're not quite scared. The second half it gets real scary, and then it turns into a slasher flick at the end. But some of the deaths were super terrifying. The way Chris Evans met his demise was quite scary, and some of the blood and the gore and stuff. I think they did a good job with it. But yeah, I mean, once you've got the guy running around naked chasing everyone with a knife, like it definitely feels like a slasher film. But again, it's like a couple of my favorite actors. Cillian Murphy again, like works with Danny Boyle. Well,
that guy's been the unsung hero of a lot of movies.
Yeah,
like so many movies.
He's amazing.
And finally getting his moment. And it seems weird to say that because he's been in so much stuff, but his moment to really take the lead in something and see how that goes for him.
You'd look at that movie and you'd figure like maybe it would have been Chris Evans to be like the sole survivor, or Michelle Yeoh, but. I mean, there were no spoilers, but there really are no survivors. But that was a good call. I think he was the right character to sort of be the hero out of all of them.
Yeah, it's a solid movie. That's one that I think people should really check out if they're looking for. Again, I know we kind of we really spoil everything. I mean, everything. But if you were to
it was 2007, right?
2007. You haven't seen it yet. It's like 16 years old. But like even if you were to re-reviews, most of them like reference how like they're like Roger Ebert said, the drummed up suspense towards the end isn't necessary because of how good the first half of the movie is.
Mm-hmm.
And I get that. I think some movies are too afraid to kind of just lean in on being like more cerebral than action driven, and because they're afraid that they're not gonna make their money.
You have to appeal to the wider audience, I guess, right?
Yeah, and I think sometimes audiences prove that they can take cerebral stuff or they will accept it. I think it just depends on who's directing it, who's acting it. There's like all these variables that go into what will make people accept a more cerebral movie.
Yeah.
But I hate that. Like, I mean, I don't know enough about the production of this movie to know if that was the way it was supposed to go, or if they felt pressure to do something that was more suspense driven in the end. But
I've never looked into it. I never thought there was anything wrong with it. Like I said, I'm a huge fan of that movie. It's one of my favorite movies, period. Not just of this genre. But it doesn't feel like it was monkeyed with too much. Danny Boyle seems like a guy that makes the movie he wants to make, and he doesn't really, care one way or another. And coming off a Best Picture Oscar film, I feel like he wanted to do something different and make a fun movie. But I'm gonna look into it actually.
I was reading, so it's interesting to read some of the reviews of some of the movies we were talking about. So Event Horizon, when it comes out, has a 34% on Rotten Tomatoes. Cinema score on opening day, which is like what usually happens on opening weekend. They poll people who see movies on opening day. It got a D+ from most people. Roger Ebert gave the film 2 out of 4 stars. He commended the atmosphere and noted the opening portion that's particularly well crafted, but he said it felt it never managed to become the intense, thought-provoking experience it wanted to be. And Washington Post called it pointlessly loud, with more devotion to style than scares, and a satisfying explanation of its supernatural experiences. Empire said that the film never fulfills its promise to down its over-reliance on horror vagaries in a precision-built sci-fi milieu, ultimately leaving too many unanswered questions. Now, and its reevaluation in the years since, IGN on its 25th anniversary said that its unforgettable imagery, standout cast, and escalating thrills have made it a celebrated cult classic for horror aficionados. Total Film said the film has been submitted in pop culture history as both a cult classic and vital addition to the sci-fi horror subgenre. Collider said that it's a grand, ambitious vision that tries to marry elements from the Alien films. The first half hour or so used very closely to Aliens with spiritual depth. So they said it doesn't quite pull it all together, but where the pieces do fit, work better than expected. A film aiming for A+ that is content with its B grade.
To me, it's the most horror-ish sci-fi movie that I can think of.
Yeah, it is.
Some of the imagery and stuff, it's just terrifying. I heard someone say it was like Hellraiser in space, but I've never seen Hellraiser, so I don't know.
That's not too far off. If you're talking about the imagery and some of the stuff that you're seeing, that's not too far off. Hellraiser is very good, though. We just talked about that on our show. It is kind of like that. God, that's a good comparison. That makes me want to go watch this movie again. So I haven't watched it in a little bit.
Makes me want to go watch Hellraiser, actually.
We're gonna have like reverse days.
Switch.
But yeah, it definitely, the reaction that it was supposed to get, when it came out, it finally is getting today. And then, like in the case Alien, it's just so weird to like read reviews that kind of like, they said that some critics who were not initially favorable towards science fiction, such as Barry Norman of the BBC's film series, were positive about the film's merits, while others, like Variety, Sight and Sound, Vincent Canby, and Leonard Maltin, were mixed or negative. But Maltin later reassessed the film upon the release of the director's cut and gave Alien a positive review. Eventually,
imagine giving Alien a bad review.
Yeah.
Like in hindsight, I don't want to listen to your opinions about anything. I'm sorry.
Time Out, as one person that gave it a bad review, said the film was an empty bag of tricks whose production values and expensive trickery cannot disguise imaginative poverty.
What?
In their original review on sneak previews, critics Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert gave the film 2 yes votes, which is good. Ebert called it one of the scariest old-fashioned space operas I can remember. Siskel agreed that it was scary, but said it was basically a haunted house film set in a spaceship. It was not the greatest science fiction film ever made. Siskel gave the film 3 stars out of 4 in his original print review, calling it an accomplished piece of scary entertainment and praising Sigourney Weaver as an actress who should become a major star. But listed among the film's disappointments that, for me, the final shape of the alien was the least scary of its forms.
Well, that's interesting that he says that, because like, I don't think people think it's the best sci-fi movie ever.
I don't think so either. I don't think a lot of people.
It's not trying to be the best sci-fi movie ever. I think there's a definite difference there where you can think of all kinds of incredible sci-fi movies.
Yeah,
I
agree.
It's there. It is though the best, hands down, the best space horror, which is a subgenre. I mean, it's one of the best. I would say it's got to be one of the best horror movies ever. But you have to tell me because
no, it's up there.
Some of the best.
It's definitely up there. It's certainly scary. It really has it has so much tension and atmosphere, and like a lot of it is based on what you don't see, and then what very little you see of the actual xenomorph until like towards
it's
the end of the movie.
The shot that you mentioned from like the Riddick trailer or the Pitch Black trailer, where like the light turns on and you see the aliens, like the shot in Alien where Tom Skerritt like turns on the blowtorch and it's there,
it's just there, right.
That's the first. Yeah, that's the first example of that shot that I can think of ever, and it's like terrifying. And it's been done now so many times by other people, and not only as a jump scare, but just like a stylistic thing. Like even when you're thinking about like the fight scene in the hallway in Rogue One, or in the Batman, where it's like the gunshots are the only thing illuminating the scene. Like stylistically, it's a really cool thing. But cool. That's to me the shot that I think about when I think about Alien.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't think anyone really declares it as the best science fiction movie ever, because like I mean, the science fiction isn't really the selling point, I guess, so much of Alien. I mean, so
there's a lot more science.
It's always interesting
in like Prometheus. Really, there's not a lot of science, but
which is probably why so many people are like, oh, it's boring. There's a lot more of.
It takes a few watches though, because there's a lot going on. I get that people would see it once and be like, "What the heck?" But yeah, like every time I watch it, I notice something new and I pick up a little bit more. But I have only seen
Prometheus has a lot of deeper questions going on, more so than like of course we eventually get some body stuff in it. Poor Nomi Rapace has to, cut her stomach open and get the thing out.
That's hard to watch, but well done though.
It is very well done. And that scene alone, it's really good, like effects, and then just the fact that she's trapped in that little fucking tube and has to get out of there before. Yeah, that scene is.
Or where the little snake thing like gets in the guy's suit and it like goes down his throat, like that.
Oh,
stuff like
down
that
his throat.
Gives you like the creeps, and you don't want to.
Yeah.
You don't want to go to bed thinking about it, but that's what makes it like a horror film. Everything else about it was more like a sci-fi film or an action movie, but it's those little touches that sort of put it into this subgenre.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that movie has a lot of deeper meaning and a lot of, questions about humanity, and David as a character, just like, we went back and forth when we talked about the movie about whether or not that character is evil or not, and like I don't think he is.
I don't think so.
I think he's just curious about human life and evolution and all that kind of stuff. And when he does what he does to Logan Marshall Green's character, I don't think it's. I mean, even though Logan Marshall Green is a kind of a dick to him, I don't think.
Yeah, like he could be more of a villain when you think about it than like him and Noomi Rapace. Their characters, they're almost selfish. They bring everyone along with them. They're like, no, we're going now. We're going to go check it out. No, it's fine. It's fine. I'll bring him back to the ship. And they kind of doom everybody. Whereas David, he does doom Logan Marshall Green's character on purpose. Aside from that, like he doesn't really do anything else that bad.
But it's always like, is it like malicious, or is it just like, I want to see what happens? I mean, because I think there's a difference between like, oh, I'm trying to hurt this guy, and then there's like, oh, I want to see what this could possibly do to like a human life form, which I guess is also bad because you don't know what it'll do. But I've never thought that character was outright, and I know I've talked to other people that think that he, just because he doesn't show it, there's like shades of a little malicious intent, that he's capable of it. But
where he's like, I watched your dreams and stuff, like there's some villainy to that, but I don't think he's an outright villain. I think I was rooting for him the whole time when his head got ripped off. I was sad. I was happy.
And I don't think Charlize Theron totally is either. I mean, I think that like she's dealing with a lot of like daddy issues, and like there's a lot of stuff that going on there that is more than just her. And she's cold, but she has her reasons for being cold because she's
she died like a villain. She was
totally
like the only character that died like a proper villain, so you might even
Yeah.
say that she was the villain. And how she's like, "Oh, we're leaving. I don't care. You can stay here and die." And how she was quite happy to.
I mean, is that villainous or is that just smart? I would
have been that. I would have been that character. I would have been
like, because when she's like, he could not come back on the ship, and they're like, no, what are you talking about? We can help him. I think one could argue that she was smart. Yeah, she's just smart.
Yep.
Like I don't think I would want to let him back on either after seeing all that. Like, nah, we're good.
Everyone had justifications. It was honestly really, really well written movie when you think about how intelligent it was and how deep all of the characters really were in a short, relatively short runtime. Like you cared about them all and you kind of understand them all. And it's one of the reasons that movie is so good every time I go back and watch it. There's a lot to unpack.
And it's visually amazing.
If
you can't find yourself getting through the story, you think it's boring, just get caught up in the visuals because it's like a beautiful movie.
Yeah.
A lot of movies that take place in like outer space and all that stuff or other planets are very beautiful looking films.
Oh yeah, like, I'm a fan of the genre aside from the horror aspect. Like, Ad Astra is one of my favorite movies. Interstellar is one of my favorite movies. So
agreed.
There's some beauty there too when you have the creativity of depicting stuff that we've never seen in person. You can kind of take some liberties and make some pretty beautiful stuff.
I agree. And I even think like something like the original Alien looks great. I mean, I'm assuming, I mean, that's what, 79. I mean, it's like not a huge budget by any means. And like, it looks great. Like, it looks really good. I don't know. I love the quiet of that movie though. There's like, feels so subdued and quiet for like that initial start of it before things get completely
the sound design and the score are amazing. I don't know who did the score, but really well done. Super creepy.
And I should have looked this up too. I never found out unless he didn't want to, unless he was working on something else, why didn't really Scott do Aliens and James Cameron did.
I don't know. I don't know.
I was wondering if he maybe he was working on something else. I wonder if that was
maybe was he doing Blade Runner and he couldn't?
It could have been Blade Runner because
those were like the same time, I think.
Yeah, around the same time. Yep, that could be it. That would make sense. So I mean, like,
I don't know. We didn't really get into the fact that like there's all these little cool cues in those movies that like technically connect them. Like David from Prometheus is one of Wayland's like what would you call them from Blade Runner?
I know what you're talking about. I don't know why I'm blanking the name. I know exactly
from the same company or whatever.
Yeah. And that's fun for all the nerds out there that have those kind of things like kind of interconnected.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah. I love that.
I like universe building stuff like that where it's sort of.
I like when it makes sense, and I like when it's not forced. Like I like it was like, all right, I can buy that. We were talking about universe building a little bit recently, and I was like, I appreciate it when it's done right.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think everything needs to do it.
No, I don't like when it's forced. Definitely not.
You have like you have the Marvel. You have the Marvel syndrome. Where I think that's kind of.
I mean, everything they kind of overdid it.
Well, I was so taken it back. So I was like, I love Halloween, right? I love that. Even though we just got those 3 movies, everyone in love Halloween ends, but
how did they do Freddy versus Jason if those weren't the same universe?
So how they ended up working that out. They've been wanting to do that movie since the 80s. Because like at the time it was like Robert Englund. There's a really cool documentary about Robert Englund if you want to watch it. He's a really interesting. He's an actor first and foremost that got kind of thrown into this role, and he doesn't have any problems with it. He loved playing Freddy Krueger.
Mm-hmm.
But he's like a classically trained actor that got this part in 1984 that became much bigger than himself.
Yeah, like he probably
And
didn't envision that being his
he
like,
was
career
he was
film.
essentially a rock star like of the 80s because of like how like popular that franchise was. Because as much as I love Friday the 13th and Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street was financially the most popular of the three big ones. It
Because
was
what other villain has a face?
right. So he
You
had
could
a
put
face
anyone in the hockey mask or
mask,
the Michael
which
Myers mask.
they learned. I mean, he did 84 with Wes Craven, and then they were like, okay, we're gonna do a sequel. But they were like, we don't really need Robert Englund. We can just get a stuntman to play Freddy.
No.
And there is actually one scene in Freddy's Revenge, which is the second one, where they use the stuntman, and it's in shadow. But they were like, dude, the guy walks funny. He doesn't even like move the same way. He moves with like no personality. And that's not to say that a stuntman can't do that job. But like after you've seen someone rock that part in that first movie with total personality, then you need that guy back. So they were like, okay, give Robert Englund what he wants. And then by the time
is more than words, right? Yeah,
right.
It's everything. Yeah, for sure.
By the time the third movie came out, that franchise was making considerable money, and and the third movie is a nice little line between it's still scary, but you can tell they're like about to make him quippy and funny.
Yeah.
It's just a product of the time too. But Paramount they owned Friday the 13th at the time, and New Line had Nightmare on Elm Street, and they wanted to do Freddy versus Jason because those were the two big. It made more sense, I guess, for them to do it rather than it be Michael Myers, because Michael Myers was still, in some way, even though this is a guy who can't be killed, he's still he's grounded in a bit more reality than Jason Voorhees, who at that point wasn't even human anymore. At this point, he's basically a zombie. At this point, they've resurrected him, and he's not human. But they had the problem where they were like, "Hey, we're two different studios. We can't really do this together, where it would feasibly work. Financially, it didn't work." And then eventually, Paramount had always thought Friday the 13th was like their rotten stepchild, even though it was making them money. They were they were proud of how much money it was making, but they were ashamed of it because like critics hated those movies. Like they thought that they were like a huge fucking sin, even though they were making so much money.
Well, they got worse and worse from what I know. Like,
they got really bad.
Jason 10, where he's in space.
Jason was in space. Yeah. All right. Some of our favorite horror heroes have gone to space. Jason did. Pinhead went to space in Hellraiser Bloodline. The Leprechaun went to space as well.
I forgot about that. That's a horror movie that I liked when I was a kid.
I used to like the original. So there's that. But like finally, Paramount was like, okay, we're gonna get rid of the franchise. So they sold it to New Line, and then they did Jason Goes to Hell, and then Jason Goes to Hell is not good. It made a little money, not a lot, but they had a stinger at the end where like there's Jason's mask on the ground, and then Freddy's glove comes and pulls it into hell, basically. And then we didn't get Freddy versus Jason until like 2003, and I think Jason Goes to Hell came out in 93, 94, so it took a while to even get it made, even when they set it up. Even when they were under the same umbrella, it took a while. And like we did an episode in that movie, it went through like 16 writers before they got it right. And by got it right, I mean like it's not like a well-written movie at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's not
like,
Shakespeare.
Yeah, I mean I don't know what it took to get it right, but it had to make. They felt there needed to be something that made sense for them to exist still in each other's worlds, basically. And I guess the idea they came up with works for the sake of getting them to fight. Because you couldn't just I know, and audiences just wanted to see them fight, but you couldn't just make a movie where it's like, all right, they just have a grudge match and that's it. Like you had to. There has to be a reason
to bring them together.
Yeah, exactly. And then of course the movie did well, and then when something does well, there's all these ideas like, oh, we need like a Freddy versus Jason versus Ash. That never happened. And then we need like let's do Freddy. Actually. Let's do Freddy versus Jason versus Leatherface. That never happened. There was all these ideas on like how to combine them again, and it just never happened. Thankfully, I don't think it needed to.
I don't think even the first one did. But I mean, they'll do anything to make money. I think now they're just rebooting everything from the beginning, pretending like all these bad mashups never happened.
Yeah, like oh well, nope. Yeah, and I think with Jason X, it's funny that like that. The funny thing about Jason X is that most of that cast, I guess it's from a lot of like sci-fi shows that they filmed in like Canada and stuff. I'm not really familiar with a lot of sci-fi shows from that area that were filmed out there.
I know.
But
Well, I mean, this is
but
way before though. But I know like the Expanse they do here. They do Star
okay.
Trek here.
So they were pulling a lot of like it was like a lot of the same, I guess, like crew of actors and stuff and people that worked on that movie. They're already working on sci-fi shows at the time. They were like, all right, it's just easy to do.
Probably yeah, same studios.
Now it ended up being a more expensive Friday the 13th movie than most because even a Jason in space movie on the cheap, they're still it's.
I mean, art direction and some of the
the
CGI stuff probably would make it more expensive.
Yeah. Now of all the horror guys in space movies, it made the most sense how they got him there and how it works. And by anyone listening, this is not a good movie. I mean, it's like one of those things that's like so bad that it's good.
Yeah. And that's why a lot of people go to see cheesy horror movies. Like they're not supposed to be great. They're supposed to be funny and entertaining. It's almost there are big time movies like that. Like no one thinks Fast and Furious 11 is going to be an amazing movie, right? But you'll go see it because of what it is. I mean, a lot of the Marvel movies are like that too. I'm not expecting the Marvels to be good, but I'll go see it. It's the same idea.
Yeah, and I think it's the same with like the horror genre too. It's just like, well, I will go see it just to see if it's good. And if it's not, I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned earlier about the horror movies that you like. You like the ones that are like a little smarter. I think the new Scream, the one that came out in 2022, Scream 5, that kind of revitalized the franchise. They called a lot of those.
I haven't seen it yet.
They called a lot of those movies like they made fun of them as like elevated horror, which is like, and that term like elevated horror is like people that don't normally like horror movies, but they're like, oh, like it's a bit more prestigious, so I can like enjoy it. And I thought it was funny that they made fun of it, but it is kind of.
I like the self-awareness.
Yeah.
That's funny.
I know that like some people are very like a lot of my friends who are like hardcore horror fans, the moment they hear that like, oh, it has like a 96% on Rotten Tomatoes, they're like, oh, I don't think I'm gonna like it. Like, it's like if every critic loves it, then I might hate it. But I don't think that's necessarily true per se. I also don't think there's anything wrong with like horror that's like intelligent, like whatsoever.
No, I mean, I think it's necessary because there are horrors in life, and cinema is supposed to be, it's supposed to be a slice of life sometimes. So you have to have scary stuff, you have to have unsettling stuff. But it's like I'm not gonna. The same reason I won't necessarily drive by a traffic jam or a traffic accident and try to like see a dead body is the same reason I'm not going to go and watch a slasher. Like it's like I don't want that in my head. It's so
you're you're kind of like my mom, where it's like she doesn't understand the Oh no, I mean she doesn't understand.
That's like my mom too. I don't want that in my head.
Appeal of slash. She doesn't understand the appeal of slasher movies at all. She doesn't.
I don't understand.
Like she'll see stuff like. I mean, she told me stories about when she saw The Exorcist in theaters and like what a fun but terrifying experience that was. And at the end of the day, she enjoyed it, but she's never understood what like I think what some people call like the knife movie, basically, where it's just like that's the intention. And you mentioned Scream. Now Scream is one, but it's like a smart spin on that. Where every character is self-aware of what's going on, and they are self-aware of the genre too, so they're not just like stupid people in the horror movie. They're very much aware of what a horror movie is, and that's what makes that movie fun. But she doesn't get the whole stalk and chase. I think
for entertainment, a chase is great, but it's the explicit stuff that I just don't necessarily love, and that's the thing that I think ruins some of the Ari Aster movies is some of those like jump cuts to something that you just don't want to see. Or you have no chance to look away. Like there's certain horror movies, it's like, oh, this is gonna be bad. You can like look away, but the way that he does those jump cuts to like just like horrible gory stuff, like it makes those movies tough to watch. But I agree. I'll still see them all, but I kind of resent him. Yeah.
I just saw this movie. It's not so much a space one. Well, it deals with aliens, but like, have you ever seen Fire in the Sky?
Yeah. What?
So,
Who's in? Who's in that movie?
I believe this Quaid
Because
is
I
the
think
lead.
when's it from?
Let me make like 93. It's pretty old. Based on a true, allegedly it's based on a true story. About a guy who claimed to be abducted by aliens. Oh yeah, no, it's DB Sweeney. DB Sweeney is the lead. It has like it's weird. So like the abduction scene is terrifying, and then yep, and then the actual like alien probing scene is terrifying too, which is crazy. But yeah, it's scary.
Anything with probing is going to be scary, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Like
I
it's
agree.
the whole body, the body thing.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I totally agree. But yeah, any final things you want to add before we wrap things up? I actually think this is a really good subgenre that more people should explore, though. More than Alien.
I think
glad you mentioned Sunshine as well. That's a good like stuff for people to get into.
It's so for someone who wants to get into horror, I think it's a good genre because it's not going to be as scary for a lot of people because there's maybe not as much gore, but in a lot of ways it's scarier. But
yeah,
it's just something like I've always liked the space stuff, and for some reason I just when I was a kid watching Aliens and watching the Predator movies and then you know again Sunshine stands out as that's what inspired the idea is when I was thinking what's my favorite scary movie that's not necessarily that scary, but that's definitely the one. So no, it was good. It was good jumping on. I want to come back soon and talk about something maybe completely different and
like Love Actually or something.
No, maybe not. Maybe we can do a something Tarantino. Maybe that would be good. Love Actually, though, I'm down.
Nah, we are very close to doing like a director's showcase on the show where like we're gonna like kind of get into stuff like Tarantino's work and all that. So that'd probably be a good one for you to get in on.
I'm an aficionado. I've seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood like 50 times.
Well, there you go.
Exaggerating. So
I'd
be happy to. But
for that one.
Yeah, but it's been a blast, and thanks for having me on. Hopefully, when I'm back on next time, I'll have some more updates with Mindscapes. But it's currently in post production and being shopped, and I'm looking forward to seeing how that turns out. And just got to keep my head down and keep auditioning for stuff. So hopefully, there's some more clarity and the strikes and stuff can come to an end ASAP.
Yeah, maybe the next time that you're on, they will be over.
That'd be cool.
That'd be really
fingers are crossed.
All right. Well, thank you so much for hopping on with me, Ty.
Thanks,
welcome back anytime. And it's been a pleasure, my friend.
Likewise.
Peace.
Peace.